And if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. We also each webinar have a special question that will be asked of our presenters, and they will give us the answer. And that will be the question that you have to tell us after the webinar. And don't worry if you miss it. As I said, this is going to be recorded, and you'll be able to look at it at a later date through our website. So now I'd like to introduce our presenters. This evening we have Lori Fontana, who's a field support coordinator for New York State PTA, and Wendy Natalone, who is the Suffolk region, our region director. And our topic this evening is conflict and resolution. So I'll turn it over to Lori and Wendy.
Hi, good evening. Tonight's topic is going to be something that you will be able to use not only in PTA, but in your normal life. So it's going to be about dealing with conflicts, difficult people, and resolving issues.
Okay, why isn't it working now? It worked. Oh, there we go.
So our objective today is going to be understanding what conflict is, learning different skills to resolve conflict, and how to manage conflict with school staff and parents, and steps to resolving conflict. So what is conflict? We all know that conflict by definition is when two or more parties perceive, and I stress the word perceive, that they have mutually incompatible ideas, goals, priorities, or values.
Perceive, yeah, I just want to chime in here. Perceive is the important word here, because sometimes their ideas and goals and priorities are compatible, but they don't realize that due to certain reasons. Sometimes it's rumors in the community, or it could be any number of reasons. So just keep that in mind.
Okay, so what is communication? It's the exchange of information. So basically, it's really important that when you're communicating and you're talking, that you're actively listening. So the biggest issues that we find going into resolve conflict is that the two parties are saying the same thing. They're just not listening to each other. So we all know that there's positive and negative to everything, and there is in communication also. So I want you to think about times where your communication was positive and what was that exchange like, and then the same thing of negative, and what were the things that bothered you the most about it. So next. So communication roadblocks, perception, of course, it's at the top because it is the number one thing. Stereotypes, gender differences, language barriers, the choice of words and meaning in different cultures. Certain words have different meaning and connotation to them. So holding back information, you're only giving part of the story to someone, so you need full transparency. How you react to what somebody is saying, and that's the response that you're sending, and then diverting attention away from actually what it is that you really want to talk about. So, you know, anybody who has children basically has dealt with that problem, solving or addressing the wrong problem. Again, that comes back to not listening, to really listening to the person, and then jumping to conclusions.
And part of the communication isn't just verbal, it can be written. So a lot of people, they'll text back and forth, or they'll send emails back and forth. And it's so easy to misconstrue what is meant by a text message or an email. It's so much better to pick up the phone, try to speak to the person on the phone, because you want to kind of avoid that negative inferences from a text message. Or maybe if you're not sure about what they meant by what they wrote, then you pick up the phone and give them a call and say, what did you mean by that? I'm not sure if I'm understanding what you wrote. So just be careful with that as well.
Yeah, I mean, we find that it's always better to pick up the phone, that communication. So for example, when I send emails at work, I type in caps all day, so emails go out to clients and I will forget that the cap lock is on and it goes out. So I tell everybody when I first meet them, if it comes out in caps, I am not yelling at you. I am at work. So it could be something as simple as that in the miscommunication and the perception of what somebody wants or says. So nonverbal communication. So we all know the body language and the facial expressions. I mean, if you're sitting there looking bored and you're, like looking around the room as if when they're talking to them, that's nonverbal negative communication. So that will automatically sometimes set people off and anger them and frustrate them. The facial expressions, the big thing is, that straight face and don't give anything away. You know what I'm saying? The best thing that I found is to address everything on the same level and try not to overreact or bring things with you into a conversation. So Wendy, if you've had a fight with your husband, right, and you end up at a meeting and someone is upset or yelling, and you don't check yourself before you go into the room, what happens?
Exactly. I'll just lose it. I'll explode. And I've seen that happen. An example was my husband and son. I last year on Father's Day went to the driving range to hit golf balls. And there was this man there with his kids, and he was real angry. He was making comments to my son real nastily. And my son got really upset by it. So they came home. My son was talking to me about it. I said, well, you don't really know why that man was acting like that. Maybe he had a fight with his wife, or maybe he separated or from his partner, and he's with the kids and the kids don't even want to be there, and he dragged them there because it's Father's Day. So you have to kind of understand where people are coming from when you go into a situation, like any situation.
Yeah, we ask you to check yourself and then to give grace. Give grace because you have no idea what somebody had to go through to get to that meeting just so they could be there, and they could be frustrated, angry, a million things. So we always ask you to go into things with grace and give grace at the same time. So we ask you to be receptive and respectful. So people don't mind you asking questions if you're honestly curious. It's when you're disrespectful in your questions that becomes a problem, or you're condescending.
Right. And also try to focus on the person. You don't want it's a turn off if someone's looking at their phone while someone's talking to them. Try to leave the phones out of it if you're having a conversation with somebody, or even if you're in a group setting, in a meeting. How many times have you been in a meeting and the leaders are looking at their phone, they're not paying attention to somebody who's speaking? That's a nonverbal communication that's negative. So you want to make sure that you really respect the people as they're speaking, and don't dismiss what they're trying to say.
100%. So steps to resolving conflict, of course, is understanding conflict. You need to analyze the situation and what caused the situation in the first place. Try to realize that that nonverbal, or that verbal or nonverbal communication is a negative impact on the membership of your unit. I, for one, after working a very hard day, do not want to go to a PTA meeting where the executive committee is arguing with each other and people are just rude and nasty. That is not the place that I want to be. So that is not the atmosphere that we as leaders need to present to the membership. It's the positive atmosphere and respectful. All those things are really important. And if you have issues, you need to come up with solutions.
Yeah, we've heard so many people call us and say, I don't like going to meetings anymore because people are always fighting, nothing gets done. You know, you want the people to come back. You want them to bring friends. You want to grow and foster your PTA, not turn people off. So just make sure that you come in with an open mind. You know, if you are anticipating an issue, try to find out why there's an issue, or hear it from the source. Don't hear it from the grapevine or the rumor mill, because oftentimes both sides, their goals are exactly the same. So, and they don't realize that until they actually have a respectful conversation. So just keep that in mind.
Yes, that's 100%. So we talked about the positive and negatives. Negatives are you walk away angry. You know what? Personality clashes. All of us here have worked with people we don't like, okay? It is no different at PTA meetings or PTA functions or events. You don't have to love everybody to get along. You can agree to disagree and just get whatever it is that we're doing for the children done. And again, we talked about presenting a negative climate, right? All that does is pull away from the energy of the goal of the PTA in the first place. And that's why we find that PTAs are not functioning and they're not getting anything done, because they're spending so much energy on the negative part instead of on the positive part. And that starts with leadership too, because leadership needs to be positive with the chairs and the officers. You know, you need to find the positive and not the negative. So, you know, PTA for me has been a major personal growth. When I first started in PTA, I could not public speak at all. I actually stuttered. And now I'm presenting workshops and it's helped me in my job. And it's because of the confidence that I received in PTA, because I was surrounding myself with very encouraging people who wanted to see me succeed. So that's the type of person that we want to be as leaders, right? So you want people to want to come to your meetings, and you want the PTA to succeed in the time that it has for you at that school. So, you know, always clarify, and make sure that you're speaking to individuals, and try to separate out of groups. You know, how your executive committee and executive board presents themselves to the membership is also going to make or break. When do you want to take this?
Yeah, I mean, I can't stress enough how active listening to actually understand is so vital and important in conflict resolution, in life, in everything, in your job, in the PTA. Because if you have the wrong information, if you don't really understand where the people are coming from or the person is coming from, you're just gonna react and then dismiss them without really understanding why they feel the way they feel. So you really need to, and I know a lot of people, I like to listen to people. So I have people call me and I'll be on the phone with them for an hour just listening to them vent about different things. But you really want to gain an understanding of what the issue is. We've had issues in PTA units where we came in to help, and they wanted the same thing, but the one side didn't
speaking the
understand
language.
what the other side wanted until they were together, and they spoke respectfully to each other and they listened to each other. They were very respectful. They let one person speak, they didn't interrupt them. And then they came to a common understanding, and it ended up being one of the most rewarding meetings I've ever been to just give, you know, to help this unit everybody ended up leaving happy. So listening, like the slide says, is the super highway. You really need to be present. You have to be attentive. You can't be dismissive. And ask questions. Say, well, why do you have that position? And you might find out there's a history of why they feel that way, that the other side doesn't realize that there is a history. And now that they know that there is a history, they have a different understanding of where this person is coming from or these people are coming from. So listening is the very, very important.
Yeah, and key to listening is actually repeating what you heard back to them, saying, is this what you heard? Not only you could have misheard because of whatever place you're in at the time. Okay, you could have misunderstood what they meant. And sometimes people aren't always clear in what they say. So give them the opportunity to say, oh no, that's not what I meant. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, our kids, we do that with our children all the time. You know, they come at us with issues, but then when you talk to them for a few minutes, it ends up not being that issue. So repeat back, that's a tool. We talked about drawing them out, asking them more questions, asking them what their ideas about solving the issue is. And if you do this open and honestly, people will respond to that. We all know that if somebody starts yelling at you, you know, our instinct is to defend and to defend ourselves. So what ends up happening is it becomes this verbal anger fest that gets us absolutely nowhere.
Right. And if it's in the PTA, the conflict is going to have to somewhat be resolved eventually, because otherwise the children are the ones who suffer. So you need to make sure that you're able to let go of the anger and try to just sit down and have a civil discussion.
Right, and learn to, it doesn't have to be your way, but it has to be the majority way, and learn to lose gracefully. So we ask you to, we talked about this, what I think I heard you say, instead of saying he's a two-faced liar, say you value honesty in human relationships. So we all know how to sugarcoat and to say things in a more kind way. So we ask you to try that way. I mean, let's be honest. There are some people that no matter what you do, you cannot make happy. But no matter what, don't you want to feel good about how you handled it? You can't control somebody else's reaction. You can only control how you react.
Right. The old saying, you want to be able to look at yourself in the mirror, you know, in a
Right.
positive way after everything. So
You've done everything you could. I mean, you can't control somebody. So we've talked about the majority of this, being aware of the causes of the conflict. You know, we talked about body language and checking yourself on where you are emotionally before you enter into these spaces. Because we find that most of it is that, you know, some person could have had just a horrible day that day, and normally they wouldn't be like that. So we ask you to always give somebody the benefit of the doubt that maybe they have stuff going on in their life that Wendy said they have no idea about. So oftentimes in a lot of this stuff, you can refer to policies and procedures. If you have them, those are great. We recommend 100% that you have procedures. Refer to your bylaws, because they oftentimes help the PTA function and stay away from, like, if your bylaws say in your insurance say that you can't do something, you're not defending your opinion of something. You're defending what the bylaws and the insurance allows you to do. So you don't need to be defensive, because this isn't you doing it. You're just following the rules. There's also parliamentary procedure. Set ground rules. So, you know, we highly recommend that you do meeting rules. So,
So
Wendy?
I'll interrupt you there, Wendy and Lori, and just ask you the question: what is the best way to keep order and have a smooth unit or council meeting? Can you answer that for us?
Sure.
So the absolute best way is to set up meeting rules that you adopt as part of your procedures. So I'll give Wendy a minute to switch out slides so we can go over the basic meeting rules. These are taken right from state. I adopted them when I was the region director for Suffolk Region. I've handed them out to hundreds of people. Wendy's handed them out to 100 people. They're
I don't know
very,
how to make it smaller, so let me,
that's okay. They're very simple.
I'll just scroll down.
Yep. A is there will be 10 minutes to every discussion. Nobody wants to go to a meeting where one person is saying only their opinion and you're talking 40 minutes and you're hearing just one person talk and rebut, talk and rebut, talk and rebut. So if you limit all discussion items to 10 minutes, okay, then you say the members must raise their hand to be recognized by the chair, and the chair is the president. And only one person may speak at a time. Think of that world. Wouldn't that be great at your meetings? And each member will have a chance to speak before you get to speak a second time. That's going to cut off the person who has to always comment on everything. And then each member will be given 2 minutes to speak. So that means they don't get to talk for 2 hours about it. They get 2 minutes to concisely say what they want. We ask that cell phones are to be used for emergency only. Okay, we know you're there and you may not have your children with you, and I, for one, wouldn't turn off my phone, but I will respectfully put it aside and put it on mute. I can see if my children call, and I will take the phone and I will leave the room. The chair should be appointing a timekeeper to keep track of the 10 minutes and the 2 minutes for each person. And then we ask that there's no side conversation. Wendy and Jackie can't have a separate conversation off in the corner while we're in the middle of this meeting. We ask for people to be respectful when people are talking so that you're actually all actively listening. And then the last rule is we just have fun and enjoy the meeting. So think about adopting these rules and how many times issues could have been resolved by just having these meeting rules in place. And these meeting rules I borrowed from New York State with the permission of the New York State president at the time. And I found them to come in very, very handy.
Yeah, it's important to, if you're anticipating conflicts, to adopt them at the beginning of the meeting and even at the first meeting of the year, and then you can read them again at every succeeding meeting just to remind the people that these are your meeting rules that you adopted. And just going back to the slide that's on the screen now, so many issues we are seeing is because the members don't understand what's in the bylaws. The officers do not understand what the bylaws, so things have been being done improperly, and then one member will find out that it's being done improperly, and it's causing so many issues. So it's so important for all PTA officers, executive board members, committee chairs, even just general members to know the bylaws, to have a copy of the bylaws, to understand the bylaws.
Not a secret document, Wendy?
I know, it's not a secret document. And like Lori said, if the PTA has procedures, which we recommend that PTAs do, everybody gets a copy of those so that everything's spelled out. And if everything's spelled out and everything's followed properly, nobody will have anything to complain about because it's done according to the bylaws and the procedures. So that's very important. I can't stress that enough. We've seen so many issues this spring with nominations and elections because people aren't following the bylaws, or they think the bylaws are the resource guide, or they think the bylaws are something else. So people really need to understand what the bylaws are. And it would just avoid so many conflicts and issues.
And the other thing that we find that would massively help get rid of conflict is that on your region level, most regions offer trainings. I know that here in Suffolk, we offer trainings. And I mean, if you approach us that you don't have money, of course, if they're non-mealed events, you know, you're welcome to attend, and they are open to every paid member. So don't just, you know, when these trainings here are free with New York State. Some regions charge a nominal fee because they're usually in person and that they do give printed material. But attending training is key to getting your PTA on track and to resolving conflict and issues in the PTA, because the more people are educated and trained, the less issues you will have on a unit and council level.
Exactly. Yeah, we can't stress that enough too, because we've seen that as well. And I was going to say something else and it slipped my mind.
You'll
So
think
if
of
it
it later.
comes to me, I'll let you know. But okay. So we kind of
Alright.
talked about this again, but like in the past slides that we went over. Open communication. It's not easy sometimes, especially if somebody's screaming at you, but it is important that you hear what the person's saying. You can ask them to speak respectfully, can follow the meeting rules that we shared before, where they can only speak for 2 minutes and then the next person gets a chance. So it's very important that you hear everybody out. The ground rules, which we already alluded to and we shared with you. And if you have an indication or idea that something might be brewing, please, if you have a council in your PTA unit, please reach out to your council or even your region for support. Suffolk Region has assistant directors that oversee different areas because we have so many units. We really encourage you to seek help before the issue comes to a head, because we can help resolve conflicts before they get out of hand. A lot of times we hear from people after everything gotten out of hand. So if you really feel that something's going to come up, and that's what happened with the meeting I was referring to the other couple of slides ago, when I went to the meeting and we resolved the conflict, they reached out to me beforehand so that it ended up working out really, really well. So if I wasn't there, I don't know what would have happened. It would have blown up. So it's very important to try to reach out for support, because we are here to support, and it really helps stem major issues that end up coming up.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're not comfortable reaching out to your region director, because maybe it's a region issue, you can reach out to the field support coordinator or any one of the other state board of directors members that may be pertain to your issue. So, you know, enhancing self-esteem, I can't tell you how much that will change the atmosphere in your meetings. If, you know, you're talking about saying thank you and showing appreciation, you know, even if you don't like the idea, you know, hey, that's an interesting idea. I mean, what we say in your head is a different matter. It's how, I mean, a million times I've gone to meetings thinking that I was going to vote a certain way on an issue, and after active listening to other people's opinion on it and how they saw it, you know, I actually changed my mind. So we ask you not to go into something set on something. You know, you don't know the answer. Know that you think you know the answer, but you're willing to listen to what everybody has to say before you make your decision.
And this slide, basically, we covered all of this, so we're not going to keep reiterating everything, but the fourth bullet down, find a place to resolve conflict privately. If you can do that, that's better instead of having a conflict in front of a whole association. Go out in the hallway or agree to meet for coffee privately and just have a discussion then. You don't want to show all your members and turn them off and say, oh, I never want to go back because this is not what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And like the second to last bullet says, you want to confront the issue, not the people. So if there's an issue, you want to tackle the issue itself. You don't want to tackle the person.
Yeah, I mean, they may be bringing something to the table, attacking them personally is not, that's not what it is. You discuss the issue, not the person. Like I said, we all work with people we don't like. We still work with them, right? We still accomplish things. We just ask you to do the same thing in PTA that you do in your work life.
And sometimes less is more. So if you're tempted to respond to an email nastily or a text message nastily, or even a Facebook comment on a PTA page that's negative, and sometimes not responding is the best thing to do, because you don't want to go get into this back and forth, and then it escalates and escalates and escalates, and people take screenshots of it and send it to other people, and then the other people, and they might be misconstruing what was said. So you're better off trying to have the private conversation, not via text, email, etc.
Yeah, because text can be cropped and emails can be copied and pasted, but not the whole email, just the part they want to make you sound bad with.
Right,
So
exactly.
we always say that personal, face-to-face or phone is much better than via email. Yes, I do understand that sometimes you want that backup and that proof. Then I ask you to meet them with each of you having a representative if you're uncomfortable, so that you don't go alone and they don't come alone. So then there's two other people that are there hearing and seeing what's happening. But I ask you to pick a person to go that can go and be neutral, not the person that's going to be like, yes, Lori, that, yep, it's what, yep, Lori. You don't want that. You want somebody who's going to be able to be neutral and listen if you're at a point where you can't listen. I hope that makes sense. And these skills, they don't just work for PTA. I mean, they work for jobs, they work for everyday life, they work for your family. So we hope that we've helped you to gain some skills or a different perspective or understanding on conflict and how to resolve it.
Okay, well, thank you, Wendy and Lori. I want to reiterate the question of the webinar today again with you. What is the best way to keep order and have a smooth unit or council meeting?
Go ahead, Wendy.
Oh, am I answering it? Or
Go ahead. You're answering it.
Oh, okay. So the best way to keep order and have a smooth unit or council meeting is to establish meeting rules, because this helps your unit or council keep order. And like we said, so that's the best way.
Thank you. Okay, would you want to unshare your screen there? So I have a few questions that I kind of thought of that might be of interest to everyone, and I do want to put in a plug for our webinars. As I mentioned at the beginning, all our webinars are pre-recorded, and therefore you can go to the New York State website under the Leaders tab for training materials, and you will find all the information of our webinars for this year. And if you're interested in obtaining the LD badges and the PIN, you can go back to any of those and look at them, answer the question, and then do your response for meeting the criteria for the LD badge. So I do hope that you do that. But another way to use them is also to have them at your PTA meeting. You know, even if it's just a snippet of one of them about a particular topic, it doesn't have to take up your whole meeting, but you have a computer, you have a screen. I mean, every school just about now has smart boards where you could put it right on there for the meeting. And if it's a topic about bylaws or procedures or, you know, conflict, show a few of the slides and have a conversation about it afterwards. And it doesn't cost anything. Always training is important. The more training you had, and I think Lori and Wendy mentioned that, the more training you have, the better it's going to be for you as a leader and for your PTA in general. So a couple of questions that I had. I know you spoke about meeting rules. So how would you go about setting up meeting rules? I mean, some people don't know where to start with something like that. I know you gave a great example, but how do you go about setting them in your PTA?
Oh, you're asking us?
Is that for us?
Yes,
Yes.
that's for you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, hey, I plagiarized. I stole them from state. I thought they were great. We discussed them on a region level when we adopted them 3 years ago. And they can be amended at any time. I mean, I know personally it's very difficult to start with nothing. So we'd be happy to share those meeting rules with anybody who wants them. You know, and then you expand on them. It's better to start with something than nothing. It can be a whole lot less intimidating, right?
Right. We're all for sharing. I mean, yeah, we would be happy to share. And then you
Can I
adapt
ask you
them
both to
fit
put your
your
emails in the
PTA.
chat box so that people can
sure.
contact you if they need a copy of that then?
Sure.
Okay. So you can do that. Another question, what recourse does a unit have if their PTA is not functioning? Tell us where we would go, what we would do if we're just not getting things done and we just can't come to order despite the conflicts, et cetera. What should we do?
Like we said before, depending upon what the conflict is, you can reach, if you have a PTA council, you can reach out to your PTA council first. And if they feel they can handle it, maybe mediate for this unit, they will step in. If not, I know Suffolk Region we have a website where people could go, and depending upon the issue, you can contact our bylaws chair, you can contact your assistant director if you have an issue with the way the minutes are being presented or the treasurer's report. Sometimes they're not happy with the treasurer's report, or it's not being presented at every meeting. You can reach out to our treasurer and ask the question, and then the treasurer can help out. Could reach out to me, you know. So each region has its own resources and supports system. I believe most regions have their own websites. If not, the region directors are listed on the New York State PTA website. One of our PowerPoint slides had the link to the region directors where you could find the email for your region director and the name of the person. So you can directly click on that and it'll send an email to them. We also have a PTA phone, so you can call the phone and leave a message. So I don't know if Lori has anything to add to that.
No, you covered everything.
And I think that's important that units have to understand that they're not alone out there. I mean, there is a whole support system, and all you need to do is send an email or make a phone call within your region, and you'll have somebody there that can help you. So it's important that we do that as PTAs. We don't stand alone. You know, we do have this support system. Another question that came up is, what do you see as like the most often place you find that conflict occurs? You know, where is that happening a lot that you see in your work in the region?
Oh, it's gotta be,
Where do you see the conflict most happening?
it's gotta be nomination elections.
Yeah.
It's just,
It's nominations and elections. It's this season has been crazy with issues.
I mean, it's always bad, but this has been exceedingly bad. And the 90% of the problem, probably 99% of the problem, is they're not educating themselves. They're not
Right,
taking advantage of the trainings to find out what they're supposed to do, so that there won't be any issues.
right,
Right.
They only call us after the damage has been done. They
right,
don't bother to call and seek help to avoid any issues.
right.
You know,
Thank-
they're trying to, we can't fix it after it's done. It's very rare that a region or state can step in and overturn something. I mean, it has to be exceeding circumstances. But if you'd reached out to your region prior, all of it could have been avoided just by attending training.
Exactly. Or
And
even just
demanding that
reaching
you're
out ahead of time. A training will answer all, like Lori said, 99.9% of the questions that come up. But I had units that reached out to me afterwards and expected me to wave a magic wand and make everything the way they wanted, but then of course there was another side to the story too. So, but I've had people reach out to me ahead of time before the nominating committee met, and I explained what to do, and they actually took notes when I was on the phone with them, and so that PTA everything ended up working out really well. So
Yes,
it's very
we need.
important to attend. We can't stress it. So many times I'll say, if you had gone to training, this wouldn't have happened. All these issues would have been avoided.
Yes, yes, be proactive in your information gathering and your training taking instead of reactive, because there's little to nothing we can do if your whole membership has voted to agree with it. So like, we can't overturn that election. So we ask you to attend training. I mean, there isn't a region out there that wouldn't be able to send you to the state website where there's a nominations and elections pre-taped training. That's
With documents attached, with a bunch of handouts and
Yes.
checklists and suggestions on how to, a sample letter, acceptance letter, and a sample nominating committee report. Everything's up there.
Yes. So I mean, the training state and regions have worked very hard to amass training, because we all started, like you are from the beginning. So we know what you need because we needed it at one time. So we're always ever changing that information and adding to it, because we find, oh, well, they need more clarification on this and they need more clarification than that. And the resource guide, the New York State PTA resource guide, other than your bylaws and your procedures, other bylaws first, New York State resource guide second, and then the procedures. Those are the orders of what you should be following. And there's so much, and it's live documents on the state website. They're always updating it. They change the date when they change it. You don't have to wonder if it's new. So state has, gone out of its way to do everything they can to make your job and life easier in PTA. You just need to
Yeah,
take advantage of it.
yeah.
Excellent information. And again, that resource guide is on the website as well in all the different sections. What advice would you give for if you have a person who's just super disruptive and will not stop talking and is overtaking the meeting, let's say as a presiding officer, as a president, what can you do?
This is where those meeting rules come into play. And the presiding officer, you have to bring a gavel with you, because sometimes you're gonna have to call them out of order if they're not sticking to the agenda topics. You can call them out of order and say, we're not discussing this anymore. We're moving on. If it's something that you could refer to committee, possibly, if they want to look at something, you could say, we can refer to a committee. You have to be able to shut them down. I know it's very difficult, but the meeting rules would help so much in that regard, because they'd be limited to how many times they can speak, how long they can speak. I could go on and on.
But I think your point about the committee is excellent, because especially when there's a controversial issue like we've seen sometimes in budget discussions and things like that, or something's going on in the community, you have two different sides. on it, and asking for a committee to refer this to committee that can truly be a group of 3 to 5 or 6 people that can get together and bring back to the whole unit information on the pros and the cons of putting in a park or putting in this, or, building a new apartment building, because it's something that's going to impact the community. So that's an excellent suggestion. The refer to committee is a very important thing to kind of quell that disruption a little bit by saying to that person, well, you could be onto the committee. Do you want to be the chair of the committee or whatever? So it kind of gets that person feeling like you're really taking care of them and you really care about them. And a
You
lot of
heard
times, it will happen.
So it's actually as if you heard them and you were taking what they
Right.
had to say and it had value. You're
Right.
giving value.
And I think that was stressed a lot in the webinar presentation about everyone has value, and it's not about who the person is, but it's what they said and how they said it, and sometimes can be misconstrued. And so that's why speaking to them privately or just trying to get the bodies together to discuss something is important. And I was just going to ask the last one, which Wendy kind of asked about dealing with a controversial issue, and she spoke perfectly about that. Put it together as a committee and let people, kind of hash it out and come with both sides of an issue, and then have that discussion. And according to the meeting rules, you would allow people to have a limited amount of time to speak on the issue, and that would certainly keep your meeting moving, but it would also allow everybody their chance to speak. Okay. Any other questions or anything? Okay, well, I thank you all for attending. Again, as I mentioned, this is our last webinar of the season. And if you suggested any topics or you would like to suggest any topics for future meetings, we would love to hear it. We do have our summer leadership training coming up in July 27th, 28th in Desmond in Albany. And we will have 4 sessions of workshops there of pretty much any topic you could think to cover. And so we hope to see you there. And it's a Barbie theme this year, so we hope everyone dresses in their best pink Barbie outfits. Okay. Thank you again, Wendy and Lori. Have a great evening and good night.
Right.
Thank you. Good night.